I sent out a bunch of information this morning, and I apologize. We had our meetings yesterday afternoon, and then trying to get everything out to you. So I tried to get it out as early as I could this morning. So we will have some recap from the the work group chairs, if you don't mind going through and just kind of giving everybody the high points. I did put together a preliminary report that we can chew up today on this call, and then we'll define our next steps, and then confirm our next meeting date and time, and if there's any assignments that we need to make, that sort of thing. So anybody have anything we need to add or change about the agenda? All right, then we'll go ahead and start with resources. Mark McDowell, please.
Okay, the highlights for us yesterday are involved. We had a lot of discussion about the SBA programs that are out there beyond the PPP loans. Specifically, we talked about the economic injury loans that are available there. Just basically reviewed most people understand that they can apply for the $10,000 grant, and then later you can proceed with an actual loan application. The terms of that loan are determined by financial need, which I'm not sure how SBA is identifying that yet, but it'll vary between businesses. But the terms on the rate can be no higher than 4%, and the terms can be up to 30 years, which is very liberal terms to help people. We talked about that a good bit. We did have some discussion about the possibility of coming together as a community to help with the administering of masks and purchasing masks and things, but I don't think we really got very far with that, because the fact is there are so many businesses that have needs right now from being closed that we just really didn't think that was something to pursue very hard, just from the simple fact that everybody's too busy trying to open their own business. And then there was some reminder about deferral options within the banks. If you have business debt, to make sure you get in front of people ahead of time to talk about what you can and can't do. And that's it. If you can, unless I'm missing something, that was the highlights of what we discussed.
That's good. Anybody have any questions? Thoughts of things we should have talked about that wasn't listed by what Mark briefed us on?
Mark, this is Frank. I have a question. I know the SBA probably hadn't written any real good guidelines about forgiveness on the PPP yet, but I got something from some Novus this morning talking about a lot of the loans wouldn't be forgiven. Have you got any more guidelines or thoughts on that? It actually even gave you an option here to pay the money back by May 7th, so there'd be no interest or penalties.
What it was talking about, Frank, we actually just got that not very long ago. There's a lot of discussion about businesses who apply for the SBA PPP program that may not actually need it. So they're basically saying, look, if you said you needed the money, and in reality your business hasn't suffered any, and it looks like everything's going to be fine with you, but you understood that you needed to apply for it at the time, but now you realize that everything's fine, you can give us the money back, and it's basically we're good. There's some strong language in there, including some criminal language. And that's what it's talking about, Frank, is if you have a business who has not been impacted, but yet they received the money anyway, then those are the people they're talking to that have the option of repaying it. Because what they don't want to happen is someone comes back later to ask for forgiveness, and they certify that their business had been impacted, and they took the money in good faith, when in reality it didn't.
Okay.
So Mark, to kind of expand
I don't think it would apply to any business that obviously had been closed or showed severe, a drop in sales and so forth. But obviously there are businesses that, they're operating perfectly fine with no economic impact, and that's where that letter is directed at.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question, what Frank said, but you just answered it. That basically it's based on your current economic circumstances, not your future or estimated, economic status, right?
That's how we understand it. I think it's basically, again, it wasn't very clear to say this is, you've got to be off by X number percent or anything like that. But we're sending out a form letter, and I could share it with the group. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you will get this if you got a PPP loan from whichever bank. But I just read it before I came online, so I've got to review it again to give you a little bit better detail.
Thanks, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mark. That was great. All right, so Frank, why don't you walk through the protocols discussion from yesterday?
Okay, well, we protocol group has met one time, or part of us have met one time, and we drew some guidelines. We had a meeting yesterday and discussed a good bit of the guidelines that we drew up. They're primarily for restaurants is what we drew up, thinking that retail is already pretty well established anyway, what's going on there. And I think our accommodations group basically had some guidelines they had already written. So basically focused most of ours on restaurants. I think everyone received a copy of that, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I also sent out the accommodations, what they were working on, as well as an HR for employees.
So I think everyone in the conversation yesterday pretty well agreed these were good guidelines and good ideas. Of course, a lot of it was just encouraging people to do things and not a law, actually, encouraging people to do the correct thing. And I guess we just opened up for questions or input, I guess.
Right. I think, and Mike, I think, a question for you at the city, mandates sort of take on a liability status, right? So if there are recommendations of guidelines, there might be some mandates that come down from a government entity like the governor or the federal government could say, we're all supposed to wear masks, or a business could say, you have to wear a mask to enter. But if we said you have to follow these rules, we really don't have enforcement, or should we necessarily suggest that we want to accept liability if we try to say that it's a mandate? Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not going to mandate anything,
Right.
because before this thing's over, there's going to be lawsuits flying
Right.
on things that are being mandated in other jurisdictions that are, so we're not going to mandate anything as far as the city. And I would suggest that you not mandate anything.
Right.
You can say, these are what we would suggest from the Restaurant Association or wherever you're getting them. But
I think it should be listed as recommendations.
Right.
But I don't, there's no way that we can legally mandate. And, we may try, but we are not going to put ourselves in a place where our city is going to have multiple lawsuits.
Right. Well, I asked that question mostly for people who are watching, because I think some citizens are waiting for the government to tell us what we should be doing. And I just think that those that are observing but maybe didn't participate in watching our discussion yesterday, just to bring out some of those points, I think is valuable for the conversation. Thank you.
And again, what we did, we used the word encouraging or encourage or discourage in certain cases is what we did, rather than trying to do a mandate or a law.
Right. Thank you. Did anybody have any additions or other resources that we should share? I think when we put our report together, we can put in those other documents that have also been shared. But as Frank said, that the other ones were pretty well covered, so they concentrated on restaurants. Okay, so far this is going really smoothly, so that's good. Mendel, communications and outreach. You're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. So yeah, yesterday we had the opportunity to talk about kind of all the recommendations. We know that one of the things that we as a chamber are doing, Cheryl, is we're being a conduit for the city of North Myrtle Beach and helping them create their staffing levels and being a communication line to allow them to have the information necessary to staff the beaches with lifeguards, things of that nature, by sharing occupancy rate, which is given to you guys confidentially on a daily basis. That was one of the plans that we do have for communication. The other thing was to recommend the recommended protocols that the rental agencies have put up, including the property management companies, as well as our accommodations across the board, having those recommended policies put up. We did have 70 members that met on Wednesday now and had a really good meeting to talk about recommended policies, procedures, things of that nature, to make sure that we are protecting our citizens, our visitors, and the employees that work within those organizations. The other one was continue to monitor the governor's plan. There is a conference, as you have seen, a conference today by the governor at 4 o'clock. Some of the mandates that we talked about, we're going to have to wait and see what those are going to be recommended by the governor and from the state at the state level, which also goes back to include opening up gyms, spas, other close contact service businesses as well. We talked about having the ability to communicate to the city through the vacation management companies so that we're not tying up 911 resources or public dispatchers resources that the city needs for other services and outlets to deal with actual issues that are going on within the city. So kind of allowing our accommodations members to police those issues and, you know, take care of those issues and then get public safety involved when they need to get involved. And then we just talked about, you know, the mayor is going to be putting out some really good public information for us, the citizens, our visitors, through some public announcements, and just really kind of having that strong community message that, you know, our business is out there. We're doing the best we can, and we'll continue to operate in a safe manner to provide the best services in a safe way.
Great. Any questions or discussion about the communications?
Follow up to some of the points you made. We just did another video. I did another video just about 30 minutes ago. I talked about our economy, talked about the steps that the protocols that our hospitality and our accommodations are placing protocols to take precautionary steps for the health and safety of our residents, of our visitors, and of our employees. Talked about that. I went through all of the things that you mentioned, but we certainly will do more in the next coming week and get some more videos out.
Great, thank you. I think those will be really.
I hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Glad I didn't interrupt you though. Mendel, yesterday you talked about communication to residents via their mailboxes as well as utility bills. You or Mike, do we know when that will start?
Cheryl's, I think she's got that in kind of some of the summary information. So I'm gonna turn that over to Cheryl if that's okay.
Okay. Sure. So we're going to have the artwork for the flyers ready to the city next week to go out in the May mailing for the utilities, and then our videos and paid and organic social media for the residents will start next week. And so that messaging, we're underway with creating the videos that we're doing as well. Monica shot one with us yesterday. I wasn't there, but I understand she was fabulous. So thank you, Monica. I'm really talking about the resources that we have at McLeod and what's the status of those to help reassure people that our hospitals aren't full and we're inviting people in that don't live here.
That's great.
Underlying message. And then they were actually at the hospital. So they actually, you could see the inside and that sort of thing. So I don't know, I don't have Michael's schedule in front of me, but I know they were at Purpleologist today, so they were Barefoot Landing, getting some videos there with Barbara and her husband talking about what they're doing to get ready and how they miss people coming in, and they're glad to be getting open again. We've got Frank scheduled to talk about what, how the community needs to get back out and, what their business is doing and really represent that, that retail. We had thought we were going to do some groups of people, but in a filming and trying to do it with social distancing, we're trying to do one-on-ones as much as possible and more of an interview kind of format. Michael has been sending me pictures throughout the day of what they're working on, but it's going well. And I think people will connect to it because, again, we're putting that face to a name. If I could just say, Jeff, I don't know if you've connected with Michael yet, because I know Jeff is one of the ones that we've been wanting to get on camera to make sure that we've got you too. So but we've got some good stuff underway, and it's going to start showing up next week as well.
And one more thing to add, Cheryl, is yesterday we did discuss all of our accommodations members are asking anyone that is in our community that thinks they have COVID-19 to use McLeod Telehealth so that they can go to a place where they can be tested on spot. And we can find out sooner than later.
Right. So the first phase of our messaging that we're working on, and again, the city is helping us, big partner in this, and they're supporting financially the resident portion of this. But the first step is to bring people up to speed on what we have been doing and what we're doing to get ready. And then, so that's really the first part of that messaging, because, things are happening quickly and we need to make sure that they're up to speed, because it could feel like, wow, today the governor's saying you can open tomorrow. That seems really quick, but there's a lot that's been going on getting ready for those reopenings. But if you're not in it, it may not be obvious. So really just making sure that we're bringing them some degree of comfort that there's preparation underway as well. Any other questions or discussion about the communications and outreach? I will tell you that we have been going beyond just our membership roles. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about this, we've been posting things, the city's got things, continuing to develop workshops and things like that, and preparing a reopening toolkit. The Chambers of Commerce in North and South Carolina are working together on sharing some of the resources for those toolkits, and getting that information out as quickly as we can. So some of it's hard until you know what the rules are going to be or the recommendations are going to be, but we are working to get that out quickly. And so there's a lot of moving parts to this, but everybody's working well together and sharing, collaborating, and it makes me really proud of the people that are in this community as well as our region and state. So, watching all of this and getting to see a little bit behind the curtain, I think people would feel better about it too. So I'm just hoping that they'll be receptive to the messages that we'll be sharing over the coming weeks and take it to heart that we are thinking about them. All right, I'm going to share my screen and bring up I did a PowerPoint, and I sent it out to you guys this morning. We're on the agenda to do a preliminary, just sort of a report to City Council. And so I thought, I'll put something together just as a starting point, since we all had our meeting yesterday and now here we are today, less than 24 hours later, trying to get this going. I'm not driving very well. Hang on just a second. It has to be. Okay. Share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Cheryl.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So I just created, a few slides, and I don't have a lot of text to go with this. I thought I would take the comments from today and I'll work with Mark and Mendel and Frank to make sure we've got the right words. Although I will tell you, you're welcome to do your part of this if you'd like, but I also want to keep it simple and straightforward. So I thought we'd start with just sharing with them that we looked at, from a resource standpoint, we looked at the federal, state, and local, and talk about what, give the recap that that Mark did. The protocols, we looked at the CDC, the DHEC, and then the business sectors, and Frank really concentrated on the restaurants because that was the gap, but all of those other sources were also, explored. And then the communications, looking at what is it for the residents, the businesses, and the visitor. And then going into more detail, and this is where I need, Mark and Mendel and Frank to say, oh, you need to add this or change that, and we can certainly make those adjustments here. But just showing that we talked about the federal and the payroll protection program, and I think it's actually the P, that third P is wrong. The small business disaster loan. We talked about the governor's 1.9 billion, but that most of that's, well, right now it's earmarked for the COVID relief. And then there's the potential for that 260 million non-recurring funds for marketing campaigns. And then we probably need to look at making sure that as a community or task force that we support the marketing plan that we've got in conjunction with the city and the chamber, but also looking at some of those dollars maybe going to chambers and CVBs, and we want to make sure that ours is in that mix. And then also we talked about the banking issues, the workshops and training opportunities, and the reopening toolkit. And Mark, we can get more specific on this if you wanted to add the deferrals and some of the things that we talked about in your report today. So this was just a starting point based on what I put together. So do we want to pause as we go through this, or do you want me to just keep going and then we'll talk about it? What's your preference?
I mean, we can just keep going as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned. I mean, I think it's a good summary, and then we could just, get more specific, one-on-one, I think will be easier.
Okay, very good. And then for the protocols, really just, the CDC is expected to have recommendations, DHEC will. So the business sectors were already collaborating. And so I started with the restaurants, which is where our group spent the most time, but we also have information to share for the accommodations. Retail's already been set by the declarations from the governor. The attractions, there's really following a lot of that declaration as well as far as attendance and square footage and retail. So that's really kind of the model that they're following. And then the employer-employee stuff that was sent. And I think that was from HTC, and I sent that out to you all. But there's some good information there about some options from an HR standpoint. So just talking, letting them know we'll do that. And in our report that we'll send them, we'll include all of that kind of information. This is just a summary of like what we've done so far. The communications and outreach, I went ahead and this one's a crowded slide because there were a lot of talking points from that meeting. But I put the resident, business, and visitor at the top and just showing about, my graphics was sort of show the collaboration that, we're all in this, but we have a different perspective and kind of using the puzzle to show that in this one. But the gathering the occupancy information so that the staffing levels that the city needs can be in place, informing the public, all the talking points that Mendel just shared are actually in here. And then messaging from the business community to the citizens, so that we're making sure that we're aligned in how we're proceeding. And then really just thanking them. I mean, it's short because right now it's just an overview and there will be a written report that goes with it. And we probably have some other things that we want to put in it, but that's really where we are, unless you guys feel like there's more that needs to be added into this. I will tell you that Mike has also invited the chamber to make a presentation. We're going to be on the agenda also on Monday to give an update on our strategy and where some of the sentiment is of travelers, as well as what people are saying that they want to do when they go out. We think that'll be good information for residents and businesses to see. And we presented that this morning to our First Friday Business Builder. And after Mike saw it, he's like, would you show that to our city council and the community that will be watching the meeting on Monday? And of course we said yes. So we'll be on the agenda really with both of these. So I have no personal investment if you just don't like this, or if you want to chew it up, or you want to send me darts later personally, that's fine too. But I just want to make sure that you all feel comfortable with how we're sharing and what information is going forward.
I think it looks great. I'm sure you can embellish with the task force leaders, like was said one-on-one. Right,
right. And I'll work with that. And like I said, if Mark and Mendel and Frank, you want to be there virtually on Monday, if that's all right, Mike, we could actually do, or yeah, Mike, if that's possible, you want us to have all of us do that and have the task force there, I think would be great too, just so that the community sees that you're all real people doing things on their behalf and helping advise the city council so that we're looking out for our community.
Yeah, I think that would be great. You know, for them to zoom in and, you know, if you never know what questions are like to be asked. And so you'd be able to, you know, I'm not sure everybody here was logged on this morning for First Friday.
Right.
But I do want to share with you, as I've shared with council, we opened up online reservations for beach umbrellas and chairs. And we're having to bring in 9 part-timers because of the reservations for this weekend. And of course, they came in today for training. There's a whole new protocol. The umbrellas are 10 foot apart. They will sanitize those chairs and the umbrella while the patron is there watching, that sort of thing. So there was an instantaneous response when we went back to the online reservations that people are reserving. So that was encouraging.
Cheryl and Mike, will we receive an invitation to the meeting, the Zoom meeting for City Council?
Sure, why not? Allison?
Well, if we have to attend, I guess we need the invitation.
Allison can, and I think she's on, Allison can send that out to all of the members.
That would be great. Thank you. Well, how about if Mark and Frank and Mendel, if you guys could all be there, we could still modify your slides between now and Monday afternoon. But if you want to be prepared to just share the recap like you did today, you all did just such a great job. And then we can just take it from there. And then that way, it's not just me talking for both presentations too. I'm fine speaking. It's not about that. It's just then when we do the chamber one, I want to make sure people know that there's 2 groups of things going on and we're all working together. So if I do all the speaking, it might be a little confusing to the public.
I don't mind speaking. I see Mark shaking his head. So
great. Thank you.
Good with Frank too.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to, I've got an agenda over here, make sure we've got that. So our next steps, you know, we've got, we have a lot of information, and my hope was that the work groups might just sort of look at somebody on each of those saying, okay, I'll take the lead on just putting an introductory paragraph and some bullet. It's not like we have to have a huge book, but we have to have a report that goes to city council, and anything that's actionable that they need, we should have in each section. So I'm kind of, I sort of have an outline in my head that sort of goes with how we did it in the PowerPoint, that becomes the outline for our report. And then what we would do is add any sort of actionable recommendations to City Council. And so the next steps would be really to work on that part. So go ahead.
What time will that meeting be on Monday?
Oh, it's at 7 p.m. is when it starts. And I think Mike said we were close to the beginning.
Okay.
Is that right, Mike?
Yes.
I was gonna say,
Let me ask a question, Cheryl. The first phase of our marketing is going to be to our residents. When do you see that first phase going out to our residents?
The messaging starts next week.
Next week, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
so Cheryl, my recommendation, if that meeting's not till 7 o'clock on Monday, let's try to put off having that final recommendation till after the governor has his press conference, possibly today, or if he has another one on Monday, and we can try to get that information together, because, we don't, we're gonna have to kind of go off of what he says too, and what's mandated at the state level. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
You got to remember that the state supersedes whatever we do. We have to follow the governor's orders. So it would be best to wait and see what he has to say. Jeff Martini.
Yes, ma'am.
Has there have you or any people in the restaurant business, and of course, Frank, you're in the restaurant business also, have y'all heard any talk about when the governor is thinking about opening up restaurants?
Not yet. We saw some stuff on Facebook. I was telling Cheryl yesterday that the South Carolina Restaurant Association put up that something about outdoor seating on Monday, and then what did I say, Cheryl? Was it the
following Monday for the
following Monday for restaurants? But at the bottom of it, after we read it, I was telling Cheryl, my phone and Mark's phone was blowing up. Oh, we're gonna open. I said, can't do nothing until the governor says something first. And if you read at the bottom, it says this was a suggestion from the South Carolina Restaurant Association. So, at the beginning, it looked like everybody was getting ready to go, I told Cheryl today at 4 o'clock we'll tell the tale, so we'll have to worry about it.
Well, hopefully the governor will mention his plans for restaurants today, because it will take time to get food orders and set up, especially if it has to be outdoors. All restaurants are going to have to be creative with that, because not everyone has outdoor dining. And I'm sure that all of them are going to try to find a way to have outdoor dining. So I'm hoping the governor will mention something about it today to give the restaurants plenty of time to prepare.
Yeah, I hope he gives us enough time.
Yeah, we've heard from some restaurants that they're ramping up as though they will be able to operate in some capacity shortly, but just if the accommodations are any indication, there are a number that are not opening this weekend and won't be opening until mid-May, just because they need to ramp up. And so it's a mix. Some are open, some are not. And I think it'll probably be similar for the restaurants. They're gonna have to figure out how quickly they can respond, right, Jeff?
Sure.
This is Frank. I know a lot of the restaurants are certainly stocking up, because I know that U.S. Food Service and Cisco and all these companies have called all their help back in because they're having real large orders this weekend. So I think restaurants are expecting to open in some form Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next steps, I guess it's me and Frank, Mendel, and Mark working on the final slides for Monday, and then we can, in those conversations, talk a little bit about the outline for the report. Are there other things that any of you feel like we need to cover before we move to the report part of this conversation? You know, we have 30 days, but I don't feel like we have to take it. So we also, it needs to be timely. If we wait 30 days, a lot of this will happen without our input.
You maybe want to think about finalizing that report on Monday as well.
Okay. Okay. Other thoughts on that? Okay. So do we, should we, I guess this is a question for Mike and Allison too. Like if we're going to have a meeting with, we're making a presentation on Monday to the city council. And that's mostly we present and they may ask us some questions, but should we be prepared to meet next week? So if they have some questions, we could reconvene and sort of address anything that comes up. What's your suggestion for?
My initial reaction to that is I think it's situational that we, let's just delay that decision till we see what the governor does.
Okay.
Because, then based on what he does, we may need to have a quick meeting.
Okay.
To finalize it or whatever.
Okay. Very good. All right. So when we get to the report part, we'll write it up. We'll get it out to everybody so you can red ink it. And then we want everybody to feel good about putting your names on it. And then we'll get that work done. But I think everybody's really, done your homework and have worked together, but you've also sought out additional information for that consideration, and just really want to thank everybody. There's this definite urgency to this process, and I feel like everybody on this task force has really demonstrated the need to get that done. So thank you all very much. Is there anything else that we need to talk about or do, or we are good for Friday and working on the slides for Monday?
Cheryl, thank you too for your leadership. You've been great through all this.
Thank you.
Yes, you
My
sure
pleasure.
have. Thank
Very
you.
much, Cheryl.
Well, and thank you, Kathy. You've been right there with her.
Yes, very helpful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I
You've
think
all done everything we've asked you to do. It's been fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're
All
gonna
right.
get Cheryl. Yeah.
I think it's a great team. It sure helps the city when we have business people and citizens involved with recommendations, and it just shows great leadership in our city.
Well, also thank you for your leadership, Mayor, and also Mike. Really appreciate all you
Yes.
guys have done as well. So
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. So Mark, I spelled your name wrong on my thing. I'm sorry. Mark and Frank and Mendel, are you guys around this afternoon, or should we talk on Monday?
I'll be around.
Okay.
I can make
Okay.
it work.
All right. We're gonna have
Monday would be better. If at all
Monday's
possible.
better. Okay. Mark, I'll call you on Monday then.
Okay.
Monday
All
might be
right.
better too. Again, as Mendel said about the governor, we need to wait and see what he says.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just do it on Monday. That's fine.
Let's shoot for Monday mid-morning if possible.
Okay. I can do that. All right. Is there any other business? If not, someone want to move to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor signify by hanging up. No, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I've been wanting to say that. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Good.
Thank you.
Monday night.
I will. Thank you, Mayor. I'll call you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.